we have the notification?
Not yet.
Me
No,
neither, but let's just assume we're live, I guess.
Yep.
What's up, everybody, if we are live, which I don't know if we are.
Yep.
YouTube might be broken because lately there's been a lot of glitches. I just saw the anime man, he posted a video a few minutes ago, like I guess an hour ago, and he only had like a few hundred likes and a few dozen comments, and usually he would have way more. So
that's happened to me before, and it sucks because like it's almost like it gets stuck or something. It used to always get stuck at 301 for some reason.
Yes, always 301 plus.
I don't know why. It's like just a sec. We're just gonna check, make sure you're actually their views. I don't know. What do you
like? What? Right. Yeah. Why would it not be a view? I don't. Yeah.
Oh, now I'm listening to myself. No. Okay, it's definitely live. It's definitely live.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, we are live. So we see some people in the chat already. I see One Master. I see Creep Ellen. What's up, guys? I am wondering though whether the notification went out when it should have, but because it didn't for me and I notified myself, so I don't know. We might have people coming in a bit later, but that's okay. Welcome everybody as you come in to the 4th episode of Rant Café, a brand new Rant Café on the goddamn internet.
What the?
Leafy is here, guys. And yeah, welcome. This week we're going to be discussing the future of anime, what is going to happen in the industry, where we think the industry is going, whether it's going in a good direction or a bad direction. We're going to be talking about all that type of stuff, and we're going to be, our special guests today we have Macklenot. He's back. What's up, Mac?
Oh, hi. I didn't see you there. Hi.
There he is. Look at that beautiful smile. And then we have Bryn from Bryn's Fandoms. Welcome back, Bryn. How are you?
Hello. Good. Life is good. Excited to be back. Number 4. Woo.
Yeah, wow. We're getting up there. We're getting up there in the numbers. Awesome. And our new guest today is a man who goes by the name Cyanide Blizzard. And he also goes by the name of Michael. I don't know which is his real name. But before he says anything, before I introduce him, I just want to make him feel comfortable. So I'm going to play a little song. Hopefully you guys can hear this. Okay, Michael, now you can talk. Go ahead.
Very nice. Mizu would be incredibly thrilled that you used his introduction there. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, welcome, man. Yeah, I noticed because if you guys want to check out Cyanide Blizzard's channel for all his videos, he has that intro, and I think it's a pretty cool intro, so I thought I'd bring it in. And yeah, so everybody, welcome again. This is going to be a fun time. It's cold, very cold over here in Canada, but I hope you guys are warm in your homes, or if you're in Arizona somewhere, you're probably pretty warm. Who wants to start off this awesome discussion, this epic discussion that we're going to have? Michael, since you're new, why don't we start with you?
Oh,
what
boy.
Do you have to say?
It's a good idea.
Let me see what I can do with this topic here. So,
yeah, let's just put you on the spot. I know how fair this is. We're just going to put you on the spot.
That is okay. I will do my best to shine under this pressure, anime uproar that you've given to me. You're a terrible person. Terrible.
I got the notification. It's there. It's there. It came in.
I actually still haven't gotten the notification myself, so I can't even see the chat right now, unfortunately. But yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Soon, eventually, everything will all come together. So the anime industry itself has made a lot of leaps and strides over the years, and especially in recent years, we've started to see a drastic shift, and I guess it could be best accumulated with the recent, internet craze in the anime community with Hayao Miyazaki's reaction to a group of individuals who were displaying a 3D animation and sort of the AI interaction with that animation, as well as his harsh comments surrounding that. And it sort of, I guess, poses a really interesting question of sort of machines taking over aspects of, I guess, what normal people normally do with animation, with art. Bryn, you know this from being an artist, that, you know, when you draw something, when you're painting something, a lot of emotion, a lot of feeling goes into that. But when you take away from that feeling and you simply plug in a machine to do that, are you losing those elements? Does that escape from you? Can we preserve that in some aspect? Can we teach it to understand? You know, now I'm getting into do androids dream of electric sheep type stuff, but you know, it really poses that question of where is the industry going to go in the future?
Yep, absolutely, really good points. And I personally love sci-fi, so I really enjoy those types of questions. Obviously, sci-fi anime like Ghost in the Shell and Psychopaths, but also novels like Philip K. Dick novels and you know, Isaac Asimov. Really interesting stuff. And actually, in my notes, I had the first thing because you actually, Michael, you were the one that sent me the link to the Miyazaki interview. And I believe that interview is recent. It was just from last week. And yeah, I couldn't believe it when I saw it. I don't know if you guys in the chat have seen it. I talked about it in the week's best anime videos. I'm back on Sunday, or you can Google it, whatever. But basically, Miyazaki was looking at this AI type animation where these new animators were showing him how the computer itself was animating people walking, but they looked like zombies because the computer didn't know what the head is, what, you know, anything like that. He was just like animating the bodies, just like crawling on the ground. And it looked very like disturbing, to be honest. But I guess the animators thought that Miyazaki would appreciate how, you know, technology is moving forward, and maybe in a few years it'll be much better. But he was just disgusted by the whole thing. He thought it was wrong. He thought it was, you were taking the humanity out of art, so you were taking the human touch out, and that brings us to the whole question of whether there is something special about the human touch, the human experience that we can't have machines kind of fill in for. And I mean, it's a wider question, even in terms of outside of media, just kind of like in terms of factory work and all this kind of stuff. But in terms of anime, I think it's a very interesting question, because one thing that I wanted to bring up is the whole idea of 3D animation. So if we look at animation in the West, 2D animation has been completely destroyed pretty much. If you look at all the Disney movies, all the Pixar movies, they're all 3D. And I really worry that that's going to happen with anime, because I love the anime 2D animation. I also think the 2D animation costs less to make, so it gives you more opportunities. The only thing is some people might not want to watch because they think 2D is for kids. But I feel like I would definitely be very opposed to going completely 3D in anime. I don't know if you guys had some thoughts on that. Maybe Bryn, we can go to you.
Yeah, I thought about what I would like for the future, or like where the future is going. And I noticed that recently there's been more fully CGI anime titles, like one of them being Knights of Sidonia. Ajin is one. Those are kind of the two big ones. There's Berserk, if you count that as a good anime, but that was, anyways. But the CGI aspect of it, I think for a lot of people, I think that's just going to turn people off. It's going to be a transition if that's the direction anime goes, which it could go that direction. Like how 2D anime or like hand-drawn anime, it feels nice. Like that's what I think of when I think of anime. I think of it in 2D, how it's hand-drawn, and it can still be very, very beautiful. Like you can still throw in some like fancy special effects to make it look cool. But the fact that they put time and effort into actually animating it in like a traditional way is where I would like it to go. But I think more and more we're going to see more CGI, more like not hand-drawn for sure. And so that's kind of what I think it's going to go, even though I would like to have it more the 2D aspect.
Yeah, but by the way, if you look behind Bryn, she's actually artistic. She creates visual art, she draws, which is something I can't do at all.
Same.
That's one thing. It's never worked for me. But yeah, good job.
Yeah.
I saw your room tour video, so I saw that you actually draw that kind of stuff, and it's really cool. And by the way, obviously, guys, be sure to check out Bryn and Mac and Michael Cyanide Blizzard. Check out their channels; they make great content. And yeah, to go back to Ajin, I really disliked Ajin, to be honest with you, Bryn. I hated that animation. It was so distracting. Like you could tell that they were trying to make it more real by having them like move their heads at certain times, like have certain kind of movements that they're supposed to look more human, but it didn't work for me, and it actually looked less human. It looked more contrived. Whereas with Knights of Sidonia, I actually liked that anime. I enjoyed the anime. I think it's interesting. I think it's cool. But I would prefer it to be 2D. Like I can deal with it, but I would prefer it to be 2D. I can deal with it. But like with Ajin, it was just very distracting for me. Mac, what do you think about this?
I never watched Ajin, so I can't really get my 2 cents in on that one. But I say kind of the same as Bryn. Like I noticed we're getting a lot more CG, like especially background shots. Like I feel like they're, for instance, like in ReZero, like every second scene with like background people walking, it was like so much CG just everywhere. But I think on the upside, I think we're always gonna have studios like Trigger and like Ghibli and things like that are gonna stay authentic. So I feel like we're, to an extent, we're always gonna have like hand drawn like 2D animation, which I'm stoked for. But I think it's definitely kind of moving in a more CG sort of area, which kind of sucks, but it depends on what you think about it. So, but
yeah, good point. I just want to say a quick what up to Rito-san, Jiro the Hero, Ladiga, Just Who Exactly, all these guys in the chat. Like, yeah, I didn't get my notification, so I still can't look at the chat through my phone. So I'm looking at it like on the PC with like a delay and all this kind of stuff. So sorry guys if I don't see right away what you said, but welcome everybody. We're glad to have you, and we're having a great time over here. Anyone else want to chime in on this 2D, 3D topic before I look at my notes for some other stuff?
Well, it's really interesting because I remember when I first started getting involved in the anime community itself on the internet was in the early 2000s. And that was when you started seeing a lot more of it in shows, and it was very noticeable. It didn't really look good. And it's kind of like, that's just going to be a phase, like in the 80s when they tried to bring 3D in, except it wasn't actually 3D. But we see more and more of it. And that's something that you had actually mentioned earlier in terms of cost. I'd be really curious about that, because there must be some kind of cost benefit, or at least something that's alleviating work on studios for them to continuously keep going back to it. Mac had mentioned with ReZero, I know for first impressions, watching Rewrite, and some of the background characters are CG, and you kind of look at it and you're like, why would you do this? And I understand, obviously, that they have a limited amount of time, a limited amount of money to work with, so of course you have to do what you can, but it sort of poses those questions. And I know, too, from what little I've heard, is within the getting all smarty here, in the anime academic side of the community, there's sort of a discussion on whether going to three-dimensional, is it anime? Is it still anime then? Does it lose that characteristics or quality of what's defined as anime? And it sort of almost, I guess, forces the question to define what is anime. Is it just Japanese animation? Obviously, I saw Shelter mentioned before, with Porter Robinson and A1 teaming up, that brought a lot of question when r-anime on Reddit shut down the topic because it, quote unquote, wasn't anime. What makes it that? Is something all 3D? If it's 3D CG, does that still become anime? If it's, incorporating other people outside in a more Western environment, does that still make it anime? What defines that? What is and what isn't?
Yeah, that's an excellent point in terms of how do we define anime, and how do we then determine whether things are changing as they change, whether we're still keeping that whole essence of what anime is, or whether we are moving away from it to something that is not quite the same anymore. And my personal view on this, I feel that definitely anime and manga is a style, an art style. Of course, there's different styles within that general style, but I do feel that it is fundamentally a 2D sort of aesthetic, a 2D craft. And I do think that once you start going CGI too much, once you start going 3D, that you're losing that. Like, you can still have the kind of the plot elements of it, and call it an anime, but like you're losing something essential, I think, in terms of the style that makes it what it is, as opposed to a live action or a Western style 3D animation, or a TV series that's just Game of Thrones or whatever. I think personally that it doesn't matter if Westerners are involved in creating anime. I think with Shelter, if it was created by a Japanese studio and it uses a Japanese animation aesthetic, that it's still an anime. I don't think the problem is having Westerners involved, But if you start kind of really taking away from that essence of what anime is by changing the style, changing the aesthetic, changing the cutting corners in order to make it easier with 3D and stuff like that, I think there is a real danger of moving away from that. Like, I don't know if it's like Miyazaki would say, you know, moving away from humanity itself. Like, he was very critical. He said this is an insult to life itself. And that is a philosophical, interesting philosophical point as well. But I think in terms of like the more basic point, just with anime, are we turning anime into something else? I think there is a danger of that, because we do have to somehow draw that distinction. Yeah. Mac, what do you think?
I think I kind of agree with you on the terms of it being an art style. Like, it's not necessarily just because, I mean, any Japanese company could animate something, but that doesn't necessarily make it anime. Like, they could have like a Western style cartoon, like totally Western, like say they made like a knockoff Arthur the Aardvark or something. If it looks exactly like it, it's got all the same characters in it, it wouldn't really be anime, right? Like, it would. I agree with you on the terms of it being an art style for sure.
That's actually a really good point you brought up, because there were Japanese studios that were involved with creating certain cartoons. Like Thundercats was made by a Japanese studio. You know, during the 80s and 90s, there were cartoons that were animated by Japanese studios, but yet we would classify them as cartoons as opposed to anime.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so that's an interesting, then again, question. What defines an anime, right? So you also have a lot of anime now. I think they use like Korean animators and things like that. They kind of ship some stuff out there, but then we don't question whether it's an anime or not. So yeah, it's a good topic to explore in terms of what makes something anime. Like, for sure, I think that there's certain cultural aspects to it in terms of, okay, well, anime delves into certain subjects that, you know, you wouldn't understand in other genres. So, for example, the whole idea of moe, or the whole idea of yeah, just that kind of stuff, like these understandings that we have, like, you know, what's a tsundere, what's a yandere. These, as part of the anime community, knowing what the tropes are within the anime community, we kind of come to recognize these things. But, and that whether someone who doesn't know anime, doesn't understand these tropes, would not recognize it, and if, you know, they saw it in another media, they wouldn't see it in other media. But again, then, you know, is it just that cultural part, and would that go along with it no matter what the animation looks like? Or is it something else? Is it, you know, is there an essence? And this is a philosophical question in general. Is there an essence to anything? But is there an essence to what we consider anime? I think that's a big one. Bryn, what do you think?
Well, I was just kind of snickering to myself because Jost in the comment is talking about Avatar, The Last Airbender. Like, was that an anime? Like, technically, like, if it originated from Japan, it could be an anime. But because it was in, like, you know, North America, it's a cartoon. So like, but basically what's the difference? Like, what classifies that? Where does the line being drawn? And like, I agree with all you guys. It's definitely a stylistic kind of thing. It's just, I think it should remain personally as hand-drawn. I do agree with Miyazaki that there needs to be some human aspect in it, because if we're just making robots do stuff, then it's taking the heart out of it, and that sounds cheesy, but I think there's emotion that goes into it, and there's like feeling and passion that goes into your work that a computer might be able to precisely do something like that, but you miss that type of content when you're using a computer.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yep, very good point. I just want to say a quick hello to Van Maru. What's up, Van Maru? Big hello to you from us. We see you there in the chat.
Hello.
Woo. And actually, Bryn, what you said brings me to kind of another thing that I wanted to explore during this chat. And of course, you guys in the chat, you can let us know if you want to talk about something specifically. And if you guys want to go back to a particular topic that we already talked about, feel free to do that. But what this makes me think of is the whole, we've been seeing a lot of videos lately coming from everyone from like For Never World, The Anime Man, talking about how underpaid and underrated manga creators are, and also new animators. And Michael, I think you talked about this, right, on Twitter?
Yes.
New animators and how underpaid they are and how they struggle to kind of survive while they're trying to break into the industry. And I feel this has huge implications for the actual future of anime, because I feel like if we have if it make it so hard to break into the industry, like with any other industry. So if you know, it's very hard to become a new animator or a manga creator. You don't get the money, you don't get the recognition. Eventually what's going to happen is people are going to stop trying, right? They're going to say, well, I need to feed my family and all this kind of stuff, and they're going to do something else. They're going to become electricians or whatever, which nothing wrong with that. But the problem then is the anime creators who are already there, who are already part of the circle, are essentially going to monopolize it. And they're going to just keep putting out the same kind of cookie cutter stuff because they know it sells. And so the market is driving it, so-called, kind of like with Hollywood, how a lot of stuff is cookie cutter, especially like comedies, if you look at rom-coms or whatever. And I think there's a real danger there of killing creativity if something doesn't change in terms of encouraging you know, upcoming new talent, and not just looking at the bottom line, not just looking at what's going to make the most money. Because if you look at what's going to make the most money, then you're going to be like, okay, well, we're going to do the 3D, we're going to cut costs, we're going to copy whatever Pixar did last month, and we're going to make a lot of money. But then again, you're losing that essence of what makes anime different from Western animation, the culture of it, everything else, because then it just starts all blending into one kind of global consumerist product, whether it's Game of Thrones, whether it's an anime, whether it's a Bollywood film, right? So yeah, what do you guys think of that?
I agree mostly. Like, I think, because I think you're right. Like, if it's definitely so hard to get into the, like, to the industry, then there's obviously going to be a drop of, you know, people trying to get into the industry. But it's kind of like you mentioned, it's kind of the same with any other industry. In a sense, like, the people who have heart for it, like, who want to do it, same as, like, you know, people who cook, make music, whatever. Like, if they have the heart to do it, those are the ones who are going to keep on, you know, kind of prevailing and going for it. And then hopefully from that, I'm not saying like weed out the weak or anything, but from that, like, you might get some extra, I don't know, like, it'll almost, like, I don't want to say harden them up, but kind of, in a sense, so that, like, the people who do really want to do it and have the heart for it will keep going. And then as a result, we could still get some really good stuff. I don't think anime is dead yet. I hope not. That would suck, because that's a good chunk of my time. But I mean, it's a little too tough to, I think it's a little too tough to tell right now. It's a little kind of transitional right now. So
yeah, so Jesu exactly made a really good point in the chat. He said that he really also feels that the industry is going towards just making money, and that he used Tokyo Ghoul as an example. He says that the manga is much better, and I've heard this too, than the anime, and Route A especially, but that they changed it completely because they wanted to make it more marketable, more profitable. And I didn't read the manga. I saw the first 7 episodes, that much. But I like finish, but that was one of the ones that I just couldn't finish. But a lot of people have told me, yeah, that's fine, but you should read the manga because it's worth it. It's much better. So I've heard that quite a few times, and maybe that is an example of you know, just moving away from the source material because you think it's going to be more commercially successful, and maybe it is, but then the quality definitely suffers.
I agree with that.
I think that's probably why this whole conversation of why it's hard to break into the industry, because I think generally speaking, industry as a whole will pick the profitable option rather than like the one that has the heart. Right. I mean, they want to make the money, they want to sell, right? So I definitely agree how there are some studios that I think will remain true to, like, you know, on the attitude of Miyazaki being like, we have to have the heart and like do this ourselves and hand draw it. And then there's going to be the new studios that are going to pop up and be like, no, we're going to revolutionize anime. We're going to just do things and make it crazy. And then those ones are the ones that are kind of iffy. But they're trying to do something, right? So I think it will remain. Some studios will remain, but definitely they're going to pick profit over, you know, heart. Mostly speaking, any day.
Yeah, and I'm afraid of that. I'm afraid how long can the small studios, you know, stay and make experimental stuff like Welcome to the NHK or Ergo Proxy or something like that you know is not going to be like a lot of fangirls and things like that, or fanboys. So I definitely worry how long before, you know, the big studios just monopolize and cut everything out that's not meeting that bottom line. You know, are we going to rely only on like the top artists, like, who are, you know, already established, and then they're the ones that are being creative because no one can kick them out of the industry, but you're keeping everyone younger and creative out. Because it's different. Like if you look at a visual artist, for example, someone who makes paintings or something, it's still hard. It's incredibly hard to break in, but at least you don't need like a $10 million budget to create a painting usually, but you do need a lot of money to create an anime or even a manga. You need quite a bit. So in that sense, there's a bigger kind of barrier to entry, I guess. Michael, let's go back to you. I feel like you have a lot to say on this.
Oh, goodness. I will try not to go too overboard. Feel free to tell me to shut up if I do. So it's really fascinating, and I would be remiss. Roger Smith would be angry at me if I didn't say adaptations aren't the source material. But aside from that, that's a video he did. So, but it's always been the case of the sole purpose of a business is to produce a profit. And I genuinely do believe that there are people who form businesses, form companies for passionate goals to be able to do things with what they want to do. But at the end of the day, they still need to cater to a degree to a market to where they can produce a profit. And I genuinely do. And one of the problems with that is, at the end of the day, really is about keeping things afloat, because the more profit you have, the more you can expand your studio, the more things you can do, so on and so forth. And it's really difficult for a company. Like, I do graphic design. I'm a freelance graphic designer. And that means that sometimes I have to take jobs that necessarily I don't want to do, but I need to do it in order to be able to either meet a certain quota personally, or else just simply because there's nothing good available. And sometimes that means doing things necessarily that I wouldn't normally do, or producing a product, or in this case, like a brand, or, selling a company a certain way that I normally wouldn't approve of. But if it's what they want, then I kind of have to shift it towards that. But as sort of a counterpoint, it's a really interesting time, especially right now. We have the advent of aspects like Kickstarter, where we have someone like Sai Okamoto doing her own individual project, Mecha-Ood, where she worked on Sushi Police and a few other shows, and she decided to go off much in the same way that Makoto Shinkai did and do her own thing. And she was able to get funded on Kickstarter to accomplish that. How it turns out, we won't know. But then there were things like Under the Dog as well, where, that ran into a lot of complications with the studios, but they were able to get funded to make that happen. Canepa is a big advocate for the Animator Dormitory Extension Project, which allows basically for animators in Japan to fund dorms so that they can train new animators to get into the business by paying for some of these expenses, because animators get paid so poorly, and it allows people outside of Japan to contribute funding to that. We finally have means of which those of us outside of Japan can actually contribute to that cause, can actually help fund these things and make them a reality. Whereas before, these weren't available. And it's still tough. We constantly hear about either a mangaka or an artist who ends up getting sidelined. They're sick, or they're in the hospital because they work themselves literally to death because of their ridiculous schedules and having to meet these demands. So it's like, even once you make it professionally, there's no real guarantee of your health then, because you're just kind of going crazy. And even then, it depends on, hey, can your project get serialized? How long will it get serialized? And it's such a shame, because there's still people that are obviously very passionate about this. There's still people that are very motivated. Recently, a trailer has been floating around from a bunch of ex-Ghibli staff members who are going to be releasing a movie next year. And it looks fantastic. Has that whole Ghibli look as well, too. So it looks really cool. And it's really nice to see that obviously they were motivated enough to go off on their own and do their own thing. So there's obviously still people that are willing to do that and keep those traditions, which we've talked about as well. But I think that's always the tough part, is you're always going to have that younger generation that's going to rebel against the older ones. We got to do something different. It's the punk rockers. We're going to protest, You got the hippies. There's always that generational change. But sometimes it can be beneficial, too, in terms of some of the aspects they may bring to the table. We won't know until we see more of it, I guess, but you never know. So it kind of makes it very scary and exciting, because that's the thing with change. The only constant is change, and it's terrifying, but it's thrilling at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are some really good points. I'm really glad we have you on here, Michael, because you're very well informed on this topic. So I really appreciate your insight. And I think that, yeah, it's true. Like, I tend to resist change instinctively because I am afraid that as a whole, technology is corrupting us. It is changing us in certain ways. The whole movement towards non-essentialism, philosophically, the idea that everything is relative. I'm very opposed to that. I think there is something essentially human. There is something essentially, that anime is, and that it gives us a good anime and all that kind of stuff. So I do tend to resist change, but of course there is positive change. There might be, we might come across some technology that allows upcoming artists to produce their work more cheaply and then be able to break in more easily into the industry, right? So that it could go that way as well, not necessarily just benefiting the people who are already at the top, even though that's the fear. And yeah, I want to give a shout out to Roger Smith as well. Like, I know you have a bunch of really insightful friends that you do content with on your channel. I just don't know with everyday anime and all day anime. I don't know. Those guys are like plagiarizing each other. I don't know what they're gonna do. I don't know which one's better. Which do you think is better? Which nickname? All day anime, everyday anime.
It's a tough call. We just may have to let them battle it out over it. So.
Yeah, so Rant Café 5, all day anime versus everyday anime. Only one man survives. No, but it's like because one guy, he's watching every day, he's consistent, but the other guy's watching all day. So it's like, who's the bigger fan here? I don't know. But no, definitely some really good points that you brought up. And one thing you brought up as well that I actually had in my notes that I wanted to touch on is how can fans help potentially guide the industry in a better direction, whether it's with Kickstarter money or some other way. How can we help drive positive change or stop negative change, if any? Because it's very, very hard for fans to do that in any aspect, whether it's film or novels or whatever. But is there a way that now that we have things like Crunchyroll, things like that, we can support the studios? But then again, we heard that actually the original manga creators are not getting the profits that that the studios make from places like Crunchyroll. Even if you buy DVDs and you make sure that you only watch anime that you buy, apparently most manga creators only get a one-time licensing fee when their material is adapted. So the fact is that the studio will keep making money, but they will still be struggling, as you said. So even though it's their work and without them there would be no work, they're still struggling. They're still working really hard, and that's really shows what a passion it is, what love it is for them to produce these works. Because, like you said, they work themselves half to death because of how hard the work conditions are.
I didn't know that. That's messed up.
Mm-hmm.
Just a one-time. Yeah, that's weird. I think they'd have like royalties or something like that. Weird.
Yeah, and I mean the amount of work. I have never animated anything, but even drawing something, like, it obviously takes time and effort, and like you put a lot of energy into that. And especially manga, like, have you seen some like manga spreads? Like, they are crazy, some of the crazy ones. Like, that's a lot of effort and time put into drawing those. And even if they have like assistants or under help to do that, it's still original content that they are coming up with and creating. So that seems a little unfair, I think, and I didn't know that, so that's very interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if that's always the case, but I know as a writer, for example, I'm finishing my first novel, and now I need to go get to the point where I need to try to get it published. And I know with that is like, yeah, you do get royalties when you sell your books. So if it's the same in Japan, then the mangaka will be making royalties on every manga sold. But when they say we want to make this into a movie, they will give you a one-time fee most of the time, unless you have really big leverage, like unless you're like J.K. Rowling and they know you're going to make them money, then you can name your terms. But usually if you're just an up-and-coming writer and probably mangaka, basically what happens is they tell you, okay, so we're willing to give you this much. We don't know if it's going to succeed or fail. We're taking the risk. You have to take the money. So whether the anime or the movie or whatever makes $1 million or 100 million, you only got that one-time fee. And the only other thing you get is the credit, like based on a work by so-and-so.
Right. On that note, though, Harry Potter anime would be pretty cool. Just
that would be cool. That would be sweet. Yeah. There would be some really cool anime. That would be one.
Which character should they follow? Because Harry is stale. Like, who cares about Harry anymore? Like, who else do we follow? And don't say Draco.
It's anime based on.
Don't be hating on Draco. Come on.
Yeah.
I'm not hating on Draco, but the problem is that that woman that ended up writing the Mortal Instruments. Have you heard of those books?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, what's her, Cassandra Clare or whatever? Basically, she started just writing Harry Potter fan fiction, and then she just changed Draco Malfoy to whatever her character's name was, and those books. And they're terrible books, by the way. I read them because I try to read like mainstream stuff and see how like where the industry is. Oh.
Though it's actually a really interesting point when Bryn mentioned about spreads, and this actually reminded me. I was recently watching Nozaki-kun, and he's a shoujo mangaka, and it was really interesting because you see this a lot in other animes, but I'm just going to cite this as well. Is they're always working on a deadline, last minute, staying up late, all-nighters, no sleep, and you think about it, and that's always portrayed that way whenever it's shown in an anime or in a manga. And you kind of think about it, you're like, oh, that must be terrible. But I'm pretty positive that for animators or for mangaka, that's what they're doing. All-nighters to meet these absurd or ridiculous deadlines that they have to meet.
Yeah.
Okay, hold out.
Don't be laughing at me.
No, I'm not laughing at
You're a
you.
terrible person.
I'm not laughing at you.
Hate you.
Is a dog barking or something?
You
No.
can say that.
If you missed it, you missed it. You're gonna have to go back and
You just go
find
back
it.
and watch it.
I was looking at the
Be an
chat.
Easter egg.
Fine, fine. Now we're not in on the joke.
Okay.
Um,
No.
Those who know.
Yeah.
Those who know.
There's a little Easter egg for you to find. So.
Okay, well,
You used to go
we'll-
back and
we will
watch
do it. Soul Maka, I think he pronounced it Soul Maka or Soul Maka. He mentioned that he thinks anime is dying because he looks at like modern anime. A lot of them he thinks are very poor quality, and it's just basically to be as with the moe and the harems, just to be as commercial as possible. And this is definitely the view that like someone like that anime snob would take, like where it's like everything is going to shit basically. I think that there is a point there. I think there is a lot of bad stuff out there. Like this year was not impressive to me at all overall in terms of the shows that I've been seeing, and I do think that there's a lot of cookie cutter stuff happening with the best girl and the ships and all that stuff. And I'm sorry, Bryn, but I'm not a big fan of those things. But yeah.
Me and Rose will have to gang up on you later.
Yeah, but Rose is not here, so haha. So yeah,
Teach you the ways.
I get the appeal of that kind of stuff in terms of let's relate to the characters, right? Like it's cool. We like these characters. We care about them. We care about their lives, which is cool. Which is it is in the sense the success of the writer to get you to care about these characters so much. But I do think that we need to, and like I'm more tolerant towards things like having some moe, having some fan service, having some that kind of stuff, harems, whatever. If the anime has like a backbone, something underneath all that has a stronger message. So for example, something like Gurren Lagann, to me, underneath all the craziness, the moe, the fan service, there is a clear philosophical message to me. There's an inspirational kind of background to it. There's in a way that I feel really gives it extra depth. Same thing with Kill la Kill. I think it's very Kill la Kill also makes fun of all the tropes, and it kind of justifies the fan service in an interesting way. And there is, I think, a lot of Rousseauian philosophical things there about amour propre and the clothing being kind of basically getting your confidence from how others see you and only thinking about yourself in the way that others see you, as opposed to actually having an intrinsic sense of self-worth. So I think there's a lot of meat there, but not every anime really makes you think about those things. Like I like feels only if they have a purpose. So, appealing to emotion is fine if there's a deeper meaning behind it. Like you're appealing to emotion, but in order to inspire this, this, and this. Or you're appealing to emotion, but there's a philosophical background to this and something else you're saying. Like with Clannad After Story, I feel like there's a very clear philosophical meaning behind what happens in the end. I don't want to spoil it for people, but I think that that has meaning to me. Whereas not every Junmaeda anime is that interesting to me. For example, Kanon is okay, but it's not the same as Clannad because it doesn't have so much meat on the bone in terms of actually the philosophy behind it. And Michael, I wanted to get your take on this because I know you do a lot of first impression videos where you do think of anime critically. So what do you think in terms of quality, and how forgiving are you for things like fan service and moe? And what makes a good and bad anime for you?
Oh, goodness. Well, it's really interesting because I can understand the perspective that anime is dying, but if you look at from a yearly perspective, it actually shows the opposite. We're seeing more anime come out every year, like a lot more anime than from, say, even a decade ago. And it's getting to a point where I imagine there's going to be an oversaturation and there's going to be a point of burnout. I would imagine that would happen eventually because I just don't think studios can go much further than this point of production, or if people can consume that much, especially when you look at the price. I mean, not only how they're released, but the price of Blu-ray or DVD in Japan, it's just absurdly expensive. So there's no way they can keep affording to do that financially. But it's a really interesting topic because I remember looking at this about 5 or 6 years ago where I just really wasn't as big of a fan of a lot of the things that were coming out as I used to be. There would be a lot more shows that I would follow, and I would watch anything. I remember buying the most random, obscure stuff, and I mostly buy it to show my friends because I wanted to share anime with them. I mean, that was sort of the thing I enjoyed, was being able to get something, sit down and watch it with a group of friends and just have fun, because that was my main exposure to it before I got on the internet. And I was like, oh, there's so much anime on here. So it's one of those things where you kind of sit down, you look at it and you go, well, what's changed? What's different? But I think largely it's just come down to it's just a shift of the times. You know, we look at what came out, let's use again, like a decade ago, for example. You know, we're seeing Code Geass being brought back. We've seen Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball make a revival. We're going to see Cardcaptor Sakura come back again. You know, we're seeing kind of the revival of these products. And so there's clearly a demand. Companies clearly see that there's value in doing this, not just for anniversary's sake, but to bring them back legitimately. And they definitely do sell. You know, we look at the popularity of a show like K-On! Huge. I mean, that just exploded in the whole cute girls doing cute things. And I think eventually it's going to start shifting out of that. But for the time being, yeah, that is kind of the go-to thing. We see every season at least 2 or 3 cute girls doing cute things. A lot of sakuga, very fluid animation in those. I think we'll always have harem or fan service-based things. Those will always sell to an aspect. They'll always have an appeal. And I think that's fine too. They have their place. But yeah, variety is the spice of life. And I do think to degrees we get that. Yuri on Ice was very refreshing to see come out. Even if you didn't like it, it was just nice to have. Flip Flappers was also very refreshing as well because of the take that it did. A show that people really didn't see, mainly because of how repulsive, I guess you could say, the art looked. Tonkatsu DJ Agetaro was sort of a coming-of-age type tale. It was an anime short, and for the few people that watched it that I talked to, they really liked it. It's kind of one of those things where, you know, there are some different things. Thunderbolt Fantasy, I believe, the Genrobochi one, the puppets, you know, that got some exposure. Some people thought it was crazy, but other people I've talked to who watched it actually really like it. So I think we're starting to kind of break back into a bit more variety, a bit more experimental. I don't think we're going to get too much. Like I remember years back, Fractal came out and A1 was like, oh yeah, you know, this is experimental. We're going to try something new. And it just bombed. It did terrible. And that kind of, I think for companies, forced them to go, whoa, we can't do original products. If they're going to fail, you know, we're going to lose money and then we're going to go out of business. So that's why you have to kind of play it safe. But I think we're starting to slowly get back into that. Very slowly, though. But
yeah, then that's the fear, right? That's the fear. They're just going to say, it's too much risk. We know what sells. And then we're going to have an oversaturation. And it's going to turn people off the medium of anime in general, because you're going to be like, I'm sick of just this harem, whatever. But I think that people also underestimate. And by the way, we have somebody with a Japanese name saying Japanese things in the chat. So let's see which
Oh my.
Which one of us is a great anime fan that can actually answer that person? But I think that if we look at even like old, classic anime like Cowboy Bebop or Evangelion, there was fan service there too. There was harem hints there too, right? So it's not a new concept. So I'm not opposed to it altogether. Like I don't look into an anime and just kind of look for things to fault it for. So say, harem, fan service, that's you're taken away from the story. That's automatically disqualified. Because I think that it's been there for a long time. It's been there since probably the whole harem idea has probably been there since like the 80s, 70s even, and fan service has been more and more, but definitely since the 90s. So I think that if you do it, but you do it well, and there is again, like I was saying, like an essence beneath, something beneath the surface, whether it's philosophical or really, says something about human nature that's meaningful, then you can look past that. And I would argue that like Gurren Lagann does that, and Kill la Kill to an extent, and a bunch of other anime. And you can also have great anime that have almost no fan service as well, right? So that's fine too. But I think that one thing I think that is a little bit overblown, the whole, now we have so much fan service and all this kind of stuff, and we didn't have that before with all the great anime we loved. Yeah, you did before. Even Baccano had fan service, like, let's face it, like, everyone does. But I tend to find myself though watching older anime more than newer ones. And when I do, like, for example, I watched Boku no Hero Academia or My Hero Academia, and near the end, the last few episodes, it gets interesting, but before that, it really feels like it drags. The plot really drags, and but the fanboys were so like into this anime. Everyone was talking so well about it, but like I was watching the first like 10 episodes, I was like, I don't see the appeal. So I do think that there is a bit of a story issue with many new anime, and I think a few people in the chat actually, mentioned that, the story. And as a writer myself, I feel like story is so crucial. It's so like, it's fine to have a bit, sidelines and things like that and fan service. But if you don't have that underlying story that really hooks people and keeps them engaged and doesn't drag, the pacing doesn't drag, then that's going to be a good anime, whether you have a lot of fan service or whether you have no fan service. But if you sacrifice that story aspect and you have a bunch of plot holes and a bunch of like characters doing unrealistic things that they wouldn't really do, knowing, how they're presented, then you have issues. Like I actually just rewatched Akito the Exiled, which is that OVA that came out after Code Geass. And because I'm going to make another Code Geass video, so I was watching it to get some clues about where season 3 might be going. And Akito the Exiled, that it takes place between the first and second seasons of Code Geass, but it was made after. And if you look at the animation is amazing. Like the fighting sequences are awesome. It has jazz music. It's like Cowboy Bebop with mecha. Really cool. Animation is really cool. Concept is cool in terms of like new weapons, new type of nightmares. But plot holes were horrendous. Character behavior was horrendous. Like several times, someone that 1 minute they're trying to kill the main character, the next minute they're like, oh, now we're best friends. We're fighting together against these other guys. And it was just painful to watch. And like if they go in anything close to that direction with the third season of Code Geass, it's going to be a huge disappointment, I think.
I think as a whole, someone mentioned that like great animation doesn't make great story, and that is very true. Like you can have great quality animation, but it really is about the story, like you were mentioning, Animac. But something I wanted to mention before that was, even though I think there will always be anime, because there'll always be manga, there'll always be industries or like companies that will choose. And I think that's what it comes down to, is what companies decide to pick, what stuff they're going to animate and what they're going to do. So you're always going to have crappy ones because there's going to be crappy manga, original content, whatever. But it's just what gets actually produced for us as the viewers to see. And so I think there'll always be crappy anime out there, but sometimes crappy anime is not bad. I mean, there always, like you said, was going to be reverse harems. There's always going to be a wimpy main character surrounded by a bunch of like big boob females. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's always going to be some that's anime that will never die because that's like Japanese culture. So you're always going to have that. fan service, like you mentioned. You're always going to have the anime that has like 50 panty shots, and you're like, thank you. Did I want to see that? Not really, but like we're always going to have that because that's part of the humor of like Japan. Anyways, I want to rant.
It's true. I agree, and I don't have an issue with, with ecchi anime that are just fan service. That's you can't find much interest in them because the plots are so bad, so unrealistic. But if you include some fan service, that's fine. It's part of the culture, as you said. It's also, hey, you're looking at if you're a shonen, you're a young boy, and you're looking at these attractive women. There's no harm in that. But the problem is that when it just goes way too far one way or the other way. Mac, we haven't heard from you in a while. What do you say, my friend?
Kind of hungry right now. Kind of. Well, I mean.
Well, too bad, because we take no breaks here at Rant Café. There are no breaks, Mac. And also, you're a feels guy. You're a big guy who likes his feels. So can you justify your feels liking in terms of, does it just tug at your emotions for a cheap way to tug at your emotions? Or does it have a good anime that has feels? Does it have to have some more substance to really hook you in?
I mean, I think feels are only really, you can only really, well, at least I can only really feel at a good anime. Like if the characters, for instance, if I'm watching an anime and someone dies and there's been no like character development, no build up, nothing, then I'm not going to feel for that character. There's going to be no feels. But then if you go with, say, just example, you go with the character like through their entire life, they do all this stuff, they develop really well, you can connect with that character, and they die, then it's a whole different story. Then the feels come in. So I think you need to have a good show in order to feel. So I don't really agree with the whole it's just a cheap kind of pull in thing. But that's just me. I feel like I end everything with that. That's just me. That's just me.
That's just me. It's the Canadian side of you. That's just me.
It's okay if you
just don't worry. It's okay.
And that whole argument, the comment that you made about you have to care about a character before they kill them off, and then you care about them, reminded me of Michael's video, first impression of Chronexia and the 8 Seals. But I won't get into that. But you should definitely check out that video on Cyanide Blizzard's channel. One thing that you mentioned that Roger Smith, Michael, that you mentioned that Roger Smith is big on is adaptations, and actually on Twitter I was talking to Just Who Exactly, and he suggested that we look at adaptations in terms of like a topic for Rant Café, but I think it's very related here to what we're talking about, the future of anime and adaptations, how they work. So the original work versus adaptations, and how adaptations can potentially, because they're trying to be more commercially viable, kind of set the industry back or create lower quality anime. So I wanted to, Michael, get your take on the whole adaptations concept, the difference between the original material and the adaptations, and what makes a good adaptation, what makes a bad adaptation.
Well, I think we can first establish, and I think Matt could agree with this, that one big thing that is lacking from the anime industry as a whole is the lack of a character with a proper mustache. When are we going to get like just a proper full-on mustache? We don't have to go 80s Tom Selleck, but we need a character that can properly wear it. So, but
I like this guy. He should come back. But no, I mean, we haven't even had a decent one since like Alex Louise Armstrong, and he was a second character.
That's the only one that I could think of. Yeah.
The guy from the guy from Eureka 7, I don't know if he was the pilot, but he had this massive like Wario like sort of thing. And I was like, all right, he's cool, but like he didn't have anything interesting. Like I couldn't have cared less if he died, except it's a waste of some good lip hair. So
that's funny, Mac, because I wonder why you never cosplay as Alex Armstrong. You always cosplay as girls like Mako and Menma. Are you self-conscious about your muscles, perhaps?
The first question is what muscles? I don't know if you've seen me, but I'm not necessarily a muscular person. And I mean, I'd like to Armstrong it up, but that would take a lot of work unless we want to go like Armstrong after like a really long fast or something. I don't know, but it's just, it wouldn't work.
And I just want to pick up on Michael's point that I don't think any cool anime characters have like my style of facial hair either, like mustache and goatee. So I feel like I can't really cosplay as anyone either.
No,
and that's,
you don't get that full package anymore. It's like from some of the African American characters, maybe, but generally no. It's a shame.
yes,
So.
I know. I feel that pain. But Michael, did you want to talk about the adaptations? We kind of went a bit off track, but in a fun way, so it was cool.
It was an important topic that had to be discussed. We had to get it over with. We've been putting it off the entire time, so I just had to address
it was the elephant in the room. It really
absolutely, just right there, just giant mustached elephant. So
I want 5. Sign me up.
It's sort of interesting. My perspective personally is for an adaptation, it's sort of a tricky beast. On one end of the aspect, most likely the people that are going to watch the adaptation are going to be people that are fans of it. Like if a video game is adapted into a movie, or if a book is adapted into like a movie as well, it's going to mostly try to appeal. Or you want it to appeal, at least for the people who've read it. But in the same regard, you don't want a perfect 1-1 of the material. Like you don't want it to be a complete copy. Otherwise, it's like, well, why would I watch this when I could just read it? Well, it's in motion. Well, but still, So there's always sort of that counter argument to it. I think that it sort of depends. There have been some adaptations where it's deviated plenty, and I've appreciated the deviation. I've enjoyed the take, I guess you could say, that they've put on it. And there have been others where I kind of look at it and go, oh, I don't know why you did that. That was probably not the best choice. I just think it really depends on how it's handled. And I guess more importantly, I guess what they're trying to do with it. For some people, you'll get really, I almost sort of crazy or very, I can't think of the proper word for it, but basically a smart approach to tackling it in a different manner. And I think that's really important above all else, is something that either improves upon or else keeps within, I guess you could say, the spirit of the original. Because that's the main thing you don't want to remove, is the spirit of it. Because when that's why I've heard a lot from people who are fans of Tokyo Ghoul, is when you remove the spirit from it, it becomes something else entirely. And I think that's sort of the biggest thing you have to avoid.
Yeah, like
when adapting a material is
making Lane into like a ecchi harem would have been
oh goodness,
it would have been a tough call. But yeah, I think that's really interesting. But like on the other hand, I feel like some adaptations, like a film, I honestly wish, like when they make a Full Metal Alchemist film, I wish they kind of disregard the original material, in the sense that there is no way that they're going to cover the whole story. There's just no way. So even if they like just, do like a small section of a story or a new story with these same characters, I would prefer that than trying to kind of cram it all in like The Last Airbender and just having it become a complete disaster. So while, I think with anime and manga, absolutely, you should try to get the spirit of the original work and then make it your own by infusing it with amazing, colorful visuals, with music, which does give extra kind of an extra layer to it, which makes you feel and experience the whole thing differently. So I think that that's an important component that makes anime unique from manga. But if you're trying to do like a live action film or like an OVA or whatever of a huge long story, like you gotta at some point just cut it and say, listen, I'm not gonna try to make this what it was. I have to make it in a different, and that's the only way it could be anything close to being good. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's definitely a good point to bring up, because a big one for this season, Keijo. A lot of people were complaining about the fact that it skipped, I think, what was it, like roughly about 30 chapters and just kind of jumped into some of the stuff. And then with the first episode, there's a lot of expositing. And that was something that we had noticed in the live reaction I did with a few other individuals, was it's just kind of like, why is there so much talking? Why are we not getting to the spectacle? And I think that sort of poses an interesting question then as a studio, you know, does that come down to how much they are limited in terms of that? Do they feel that that's not going to work for pulling in an audience? Because you would think that with the premise alone, it's so absurd and ridiculous that it just creates tension as is. You know, we've seen numerous articles from, I think it was like Heat Sheet and Kotaku in terms of it, which just created a massive amount of attention. So you would think that by the premise alone, they would be able to stick with an original path with it. Or did they feel that, you know, from adapting it, we need to try to improve upon what the original did? Or I don't know. Yeah, I would agree with that, though, that, you know, you definitely want to keep that spirit and essence. And especially in a case where you're limited by time, you need to be a lot more creative with your work in terms of, especially if it's a live action adaptation. And that's what usually makes it good. For more of a modern aspect, the British version of House of Cards in comparison to the US version, there's quite a few noticeable differences aside from government related. And even from books, there's this TV show called Bosch, which is adapted from a series of detective novels by Michael Connelly. And in terms of approach, you know, they obviously have to differentiate in terms of how they handle it, but both of them are done really well in terms of adapting it, not only for their audience, but from based around that source material by keeping that spirit there. Yeah.
It's a difficult question, I think. It's not as easy as saying, well, we just got to make a good adaptation, right? It's like, well, what kind of adaptation is it? Is your anime that you're making of a manga, is it like a 80-chapter manga and you get 10 episodes? Are you getting all the episodes you want? Are you getting a live action movie? Like there is a lot of, it depends, I guess, as part of this. And I think that's something for critics to also remember when we go and just jump on an anime, because it's not as good as the source material. Those kind of considerations are important. I just want to give a few shout outs to some people in the chat that I haven't given a shouted out yet. I see Ali Koban in there, or Koban. I see Raven. What's up, buddy? Kaiser Trigger. He's always good for a good time. Who else? Maria Eddings is here, so that's very cool. And we have Macklenot in the chat. I just wanna read what he says.
Shout out to Mac.
Macklenot says, "Don't make me feel live, please."
We were talking about talking about Anohana.
Yeah, we were talking about Anohana, and I quoted a line. It's like, "No, don't make me feel live, please." That's why it was so quiet for that period. We were all talking, and Max just like,
I was just secretly crying on the inside the entire time. Like ugly.
Bryn, any thoughts on this adaptation question in terms of like, what do you think is a good adaptation? What's a bad one, like in your mind?
Well, I always prefer when they stick to the source material, if I have read the manga, so to speak, or assuming it's from the manga adaptation. I prefer that way. However, sometimes I go into things that are adapted and I had no idea because I didn't know anything about it previous up to this point, and so I just watched it. I enjoyed it, and it wasn't until after the fact that everyone's going crazy in the comments and losing their crap that they messed it up. So it really depends on whether I know it is going to be adapted or whether I have no idea. Because if I don't, I'll just take it as it is and be like, great, I watched an anime, that was nice, whatever. And if everyone else starts spazzing out about it, then, well, then I'll know that there was a different adaptation. But I think studios in general would do better to stick to source material. However, I understand that sometimes that's not always the case. For example, if it's only a 12-episode anime and they have like a butt ton of content to put in there, well, then obviously they're going to have to cut it down a little bit or, you know, figure that out. So I get that. But sticking to the source material just makes it better because that's the way it was presented and intended to be, right? That's how the manga creator, like I said, assuming that it's from the manga, that's how it's supposed to be, and that's how it's supposed to be presented. But I understand that that won't always be the case, but as long as I don't really notice it, I'm okay with it. But sometimes it's very clear that there are plot holes and that it's like, where is this going? But yeah, I think that's generally my thought about it.
Yeah, good points. And I like your expression that you used multiple times now, butt ton. I feel like no one outside of I feel like no one outside of probably Western Canada says that or something, but
really? But I use butt ton all the time.
Very cool. Very cool. And Michael, guess what Roger Smith said in the chat?
Oh no.
You get one guess.
Adaptations aren't the source material.
That's exactly what he said. You got it. You got it. What's up, Roger Smith? Big shout out, buddy. How are you doing?
That actually makes a really interesting point. I want to pose this question to you guys, if you don't mind. Now, in terms for that, I do agree, Bryn, especially if I really get into a manga, I definitely want to see how that would look. But then it also kind of points to the earlier thing I had mentioned where, you know, a 1-1 sometimes creates a little dullness because, well, you know, I've already read this. So, I mean, how much should someone differentiate when adapting a material? Because I know there was a case with the anime of Magical Warfare that was adapted from a light novel where the creator said, I deeply regret agreeing to have this adapted, where they were actually vocal about that. So, you know, it's, I mean, do you think that how much should be changed or what core elements should stay the same aside from like the characters or for the theme of the story? You know, it's like key arcs or key moments.
I mean, you'd think that the manga creator would have at least some say in that, but I'm assuming more often than not, they might not have that opinion or be able to voice that. I think it would probably be good for the studio to at least take their account, you know, consideration, because they are the ones who created it and like fully understand the story and where it's supposed to go. But that would happen, but I don't know if that necessarily does all the time.
Especially considering the fact that they only get paid like one time. Yeah, the one-time payment for it, and then they're done. So it almost makes it seem like they just get paid for the work, they sign off on it, and then they're left out of the process. It almost sort of gives that impression.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it does remind me of the kind of literary industry when you're like an up-and-coming writer, like I mentioned. You have your work, but then you don't really have control over the movie that they make or your work or the TV adaptation. They tell you, okay, this is what we want to do. Here's the contract, here's the money. You don't necessarily get to then come in there and tell them, okay, I want this person cast, or I want, you know, this story not changed, or, you know, they'll add characters, they'll subtract characters. So that is, I think, a problem because, you know, once you have leverage as a writer, like you're Stephen King, then yeah, you can say, you know, no, I'm not giving you my story unless you do this, this, and this. But if you're just trying to make it and you're trying to get noticed by having that adaptation made, your options are very limited. And I also want to give a shout out to Pause and Select in the chat. I didn't see him earlier, but what's up, bro? I feel like I know all these guys already. I've seen so many of your first impression videos now, Michael, including the Keijo one. Very good. It was very good. So I feel like I already know all these guys. I feel like I kind of like talk when you guys talk to each other in the videos. I'm just kind of like, yeah, that makes sense. And then everyone's like, stop talking out loud to your YouTube on your phone, bro. And I was like, but they're so right. They make so much sense. Unless you guys have something really important to else you want to talk about, I was thinking of ending it off by talking about what kind of specifically anime we would want to see made that maybe we haven't seen yet, but we would like, maybe something related with our own interests. And for you guys in the chat, by the way, thanks everyone for coming in the chat. You guys have been awesome, having great discussions. I've been reading a lot of it, and we couldn't get to all of it, but really good points. Thanks a lot for contributing to the discussion. And yeah, who wants to start? By the way, you guys in the chat can also tell us what kind of anime you would like to see if you had the power to make one. But who wants to start with their own kind of anime that they would want to see?
I'm trying to think. I would like to see a judo anime because I've done judo. So I'd like to see that. I'm sure there is one now that I think about it. Why wouldn't there be? It's like judo originated from Japan. So you think that. I'm going to look that up. But they should do a more recent judo anime.
Yeah, actually, that's a really cool point because I take Iaido, which is Japanese swordsmanship, and I really want to take Aikido because, yeah, Japanese martial arts are very cool, and the whole concept of Bushido behind the martial art is very cool as well because it's not just, okay, so these are the moves. Once you get higher up in the levels, then you also have spirit. So you have to kind of use your spirit to make the moves, to do it just the right way, to do it more than just going through the motions, to kind of feel it, to going to that next level. So I feel like that does definitely have a lot of potential in an anime. Michael, what about you, bro? Do you have any anime? We know that you're an expert reviewer, so do you have any anime that you want to see that you haven't seen yet?
Well, I don't know about that. That's highly questionable, but thank you though. All right, I'm gonna go a direction. I'm pretty sure this is gonna get called pretentious, but I got to go down this route. So, especially given the visual medium of animation and what you can do with that, I would really love to see an entire picture that was entirely composed of not talking, simply based upon musical score, body language, and aesthetic to essentially tell the story. I would really love something like that, almost akin to what ballet does with things like Swan Lake, being able to tell a story simply through those aspects. To me, there's just something really appealing about that. I'd like to see it through limitation. You can create a lot of very unique imagery, and especially for something like animation, I think that there's a lot of possibility that could be done with something like that. I'm pretty positive some exist, but I haven't seen anything recently. Another thing too is Pause and Select actually showed me this charcoal animation, animating through charcoal drawings. Really cool stuff. And I would definitely like to see more experimental type stuff in that direction. So
yeah, that's a very interesting point. Kind of like
probably not profitable, but
cool. Yes.
Yeah, kind of like some of those, like there's some of those niche anime out there that use unique, like Gankutsuo, if you've seen it, uses interesting artistic techniques and stuff like that. And it was never like a huge anime, but popularity wise, I don't think, the one that's based on the Count of Monte Cristo, but it uses some very unique art. It's interesting because sometimes that kind of art can be jarring. It can kind of like take you out of the experience, but then sometimes it can really add to the experience. So that's a whole topic on its own.
Absolutely.
Mac, what about you? What anime would you like to see other than mayonnaise? Because that we're working on that. That is happening.
It's already a thing. It's already a thing.
So just something new.
I mean, on a not so serious note, a Napoleon Dynamite anime adaptation would be awesome.
Oh, yes.
But I'd either like to see something. I know Ladiga is always pushing for an ice hockey anime. I'm not really into sports anime, but it would be kind of cool. Other than that, I think it'd be really cool to see like something of like an anime of like what's the word? Brain. Why you no work? like a touring like small like punk band or something like that, or like a metal or a hardcore band or something like that. I'd really like to see like something like that. I think it's Beck is sort of similar. One. Yeah, like it's like touring musicians, and it does good at showing like that side of thing. But the part of me who's into that type of stuff would love to see like especially like either a hardcore band or a metal band or something going through, like even going through Japan would be cool, because their scenes really cool, and I'd love to see something from that. But yeah, that'd be
cool point, because I've actually heard of that. Like I watched that Anthony Bourdain Parts Unknown special in Tokyo, and he actually looked like he was looking at the kind of like metal scene within Tokyo, and there's like a bunch of like heavy metal bands or punk bands like in Japan that seem very cool people. Like they seem very interesting lives, dressed in really outlandish ways. So yeah, I feel like that could be a very cool anime, kind of like a sort of anti-idol anime. Like if you have the idol animes, right, like where it's like, oh, everyone loves you, but this is kind of like we're the anti-heroes of music kind of anime. Yeah,
and it's something to show like the grind of like touring and how much it friggin' like it can suck. But
yeah, like maybe they're not popular yet. These guys, they're just like grinding.
Exactly, yeah. No,
yeah,
that'd be awesome.
That's cool. And then one guy gets an offer to leave, and then because it creates tension, because like he will get more money if he leaves, but he doesn't want to leave his band. Like it's just writing itself, guys. It's just.
Why are we working on this now? Scrap mayonnaise.
Yeah.
Hardcore.
No, yeah, this is it.
Let's go.
Yeah, Pause and Selected actually mentioned Detroit Metal City, and I forgot about it, where it's this very plain guy, but he sings in a metal band with this ridiculous Kiss-esque type makeup. It's pretty cool. It's really good stuff, actually. You should look into that, Mac, if you haven't seen it or read it.
That sounds cool. I'll check that out.
Definitely some good stuff. But yeah, no, it's Japan has a pretty strong scene with that. So, and especially when you look at more popular groups like Ladybeard or Baby Metal, you know, there's definitely a demand for that. So I can easily see that being pitched as a manga and then adapting that into an anime. So.
Yeah, good point. And my anime would be, and I'm giving this a lot of thought, guys, because obviously I'm a huge student and lover of philosophy. I would want to do a philosophy anime, but like an action philosophy anime. So what I would do is I would have like this billionaire guy create his own university somewhere in like on an island or somewhere in the wilderness, and where philosophy is the only thing that matters. Like not all this like engineering stuff and all this kind of stuff that will actually get you a job, but philosophy, right? So it's like the opposite of real world. And so the main character would be this guy who couldn't get into like a tech school, disappointed his parents. He's like a NEET, but he was always good with philosophy. And then he gets invited into this school, even though he was not even going to go to university and all that kind of stuff. He dropped out. And then he goes there, and then that's where they invited all the top philosophy students. And like the guy who is the university head is like this like eccentric billionaire lover of philosophy. But then they create either like through magical powers or through like a Yu-Gi-Oh type kind of technology battles arenas. They have clubs where each club is is a club of lovers of a certain philosopher. So like Marx, Kant, Rousseau, Plato, Aristotle, and then they'll have to battle each other out to who is the greatest philosopher, whose philosophy is the best. So then you would have like using the concepts of their philosophers and also like certain powers that the philosophers would give them, they would have to like beat them. So for example, Aristotle has the concept of the political animal. So that could manifest as some kind of like fierce beast that's fighting against like Nietzsche's Übermensch or Overman, right? So it's kind of like a personification of their philosophy. And like I don't know how it would be, whether it would be like a battle arena or like using some magic amulets or something, but that's something I would really want to see. And then like whose philosophy is the best. And then you would have like the Plato Club would be on the roof of the school because they're always looking at the stars. They're outside the cave. And then, you know, you would have, you know, the Marxist Club would be in like the old part of the school where it's like all the like everything is broken and old because they're the proletariat and that kind of stuff. I'll stop now.
Cool.
You gave us a full anime. You gave us a plot line there. That was like synopsis.
Yeah, exactly. Like I could do a stream where I'm just talking about this.
And they will all be cute girls too.
Oh my goodness.
Many of them will be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like the Aristotle Club should be led by a girl, and then everyone's like, didn't Aristotle say that women can't be citizens? She was like, shut up, okay? Yeah, I'm telling you, these things just write themselves.
Just like mayonnaise writes itself, so.
Yeah, except when your main character keeps skipping out because they're at work.
Oh, yeah.
That's part of the show, though. It's part of the characteristic of the main character. Skips out on live streams because she's got to work.
So there.
Gotta live the gimmick, you know. You have to experience it to truly be able to write on it.
Ladiga says, what about if Lord of the Rings was an anime? And I think he's talking to you there, Mac.
Probably. And I mean, I'd watch it. I'd probably watch it a lot, but
yeah,
I don't know how good it would be.
Mac already made a video if Lord of the Rings was anime, like a comedy video, so be sure to check that out. It's hilarious. And I think someone else said, Arnau said, I love you, Mac, or something like that, so you guys can continue this talk after the stream. But I think maybe you guys can go figure skating a bit.
Maybe. I haven't been can't English. I haven't been skigger fading. I haven't been figure skating in a while, so I don't figure skate. That's a joke.
Well, it's never too late to start. And so before we wrap up the stream, again, thank you everybody for coming. Thank you guys in the chat. You were awesome. Let's again go to what all you guys do and who you are so that everyone knows what you're all about. And let's start with you, Michael, since you're new. Tell us about yourself and about your channel.
My name's Michael. My channel is Cyanide Blizzard. I like long walks on the beach and holding hands. I also have a fondness for cats. So, no, I do first impressions, of which the first half is more satire-driven, with the second half being sort of a review-ish look on whether we'd keep watching and why. So...
Yeah, and his content is excellent. I'm kind of addicted to it now. I've been watching all of them, so definitely check it out. And let's go to Bryn. Bryn, tell us about yourself.
And I'm Bryn from Bryn's Fandoms. That's my channel name. And I'm here on the YouTubes, and I do anime stuff, discussions, reviews, spoiler-free and sometimes spoiler-filled ones. Just anime content, whatever I feel like doing up on this channel. But Bryn's Fandoms is where you can find me pretty much on any social media. That's where you can find me at. So, hello. Hi.
Thank you, Bryn. And yes, Bryn has great content. She's very artistic. She draws on her own. And as someone who draws stick figures and poorly, I'm very jealous of you. I have horrible handwriting as well, so like thank God for laptops. But thank you very much, Bryn. And now we're going to Macklenot, the mustached elephant himself.
I'll take it, I guess. We'll swing with it. It's a thing now. I'm Macklenot on the internet, and I'm mostly on Twitch. I play video games on Twitch. If you here can vouch for that. But other than that, when I do the YouTubes, it's mostly just like I don't even know what I do, man. You'll just have to go there and find out. Like I don't know what I do. I really don't. But it's fun, and I enjoy doing it. And yeah.
He does skits and like other fun stuff, and sometimes Lord of the Rings video games. So yeah, that's basically what he does. I don't know why he says it's so hard to sum it up.
I mean, I know what I used to do. I'm not sure what I do now. I guess it's there's skits. It's pretty skitty. Sometimes I vlog if I have to.
Skitty.
Yeah, you also do some vlogs. That's true. I saw your vlogs. So yeah, definitely these guys are all awesome. Be sure to check them out. You know my channel. You're here, so you know what's up with my channel. When I do reviews, I do all the spoilers, like in the recent Code Geass video. I don't know how to do reviews without spoilers, so I'm always like, all the spoilers. But yeah, thanks everybody again for coming. We're gonna do another Rant Café next week. We gotta let you know about the topics and things like that. Be sure to let us know if you have some ideas for topics. And yeah, until next time, we'll see ya, Space Cowboys. And now I'm gonna click the button.